We cannot have this profound an abdication from a visceral link with food and expect food to be authentic.
That was Joel Salatin, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, and in this podcast series I'll be uncovering the world of regenerative agriculture, its people, practices and principles, and empowering you to apply their learnings and experience to your business and life. I'm an 8th generational Australian farmer who transitioned my family farm from industrial methods to holistic regenerative practices. Join me as I dive deep into the regenerative journeys of other farmers, chefs, health practitioners and anyone else who's up for a yarn, and find out why and how they transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with Charlie Arnott.
With multiple books and DVD learning resources under his belt, Joel Salatin has an international following, the inspiration behind numerous documentaries and the mentor and educator to thousands of farmers. This fella is totally the real deal. And what a source of wisdom and experience and inspiration he's been to me over many years. I first came across Joel in the late 2000s online, and then met him at a field day at Maloon Creek Natural Farms near Bungendore in about 2013. And I actually attended his very first closed mentoring workshop probably 5 years ago now at the farm at Byron Bay. And had the pleasure of sharing the stage with him at numerous events last year in 2019. Quick-witted, incredibly hardworking, and with seemingly boundless energy. Joel in our interview steps us through his regenerative journey from his formative years as the son of a chicken farming accountant in Venezuela, before being forced to flee to the US, through the rehabilitation of his family farm in Swoope, Virginia, all the way to the prolific supplier of nutrient-dense food to his loyal customers from his family farm in Swoope, an international legendary public speaker and mentor. I caught up with Joel in May 2019 at the Nutrisoil Sustainable Abundance Conference, and we only had one microphone to share, so he understandably got the lion's share of it, so I apologise if I sound a little bit far away. Enjoy. G'day and welcome to the show. I'm honoured and most grateful to be interviewing one of my, inspirations, not just an inspiration to me, but many people around the world. Joel Salatin, you're our first victim on the show.
Welcome, guinea pig.
Well, you're well versed in interviewing. So, given we've been at the Nutrisoil's Joel Salatin Abundance Conference here in Victoria for the last couple of days, you've been drilled. So it's been 2 days later. And you're on the home stretch, so I really appreciate that you're giving me your time today, Joel. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely, it's an honor and a delight to be with you,
Joel. Where do we start? Probably at the beginning. How you relate a number of stories over the last couple of days about your childhood and I guess your introduction to agriculture at a very young age. Can you step us through that interesting period of your life and where that then took you?
Well, sure. Yeah, I guess it would start with, my dad, who as a little Midwestern American boy wanted to farm, but with no land and no money. How do you start? I mean, this is, 1940s. And so then, of course, World War II came and he flew in the Navy and survived. And then after World War II, he went on a GI Bill, got his degree in economics from Indiana University, and then went to Middlebury in Vermont for 6 months and studied Spanish, and then hitchhiked from Vermont to Mexico, spent 6 months, and then came back and immediately sat for the Foreign Civil Service exam in Spanish. And what he found was he was great with numbers. And at that time, this is, 47, post-World War II, one of the hottest, like today, it's information technology, right? IT, that's the hot thing. Well, at that time, it was bilingual accountants to go with American oil exploration companies that were working in the Middle East and in Venezuela and what would eventually become the OPEC countries to develop petroleum sources. And the heavy work was done, of course, by the indigenous folks in the country, and management was American folks who spoke English. And the places of conflict were always between the workers and management regarding money, payroll, company store, those kinds of things. And so they really wanted a bilingual person handling the money. And so this was a very specific, probably that run on those jobs only lasted maybe 5 or 6 years, but Dad got in on it right on the front end, and went down as a bilingual accountant with Texas Oil Company to Venezuela. And it took him 10 years. He came back and got married. He and Mom had met at Indiana University, and went back down. It took him 10 years to save up enough money to buy a 1,000-acre highlands farm in Venezuela, and immediately cleared some land. This was monkeys and pineapple and bananas, right? But it was upland tropics. It wasn't down low, and built a house and started raising chickens. And the dream was dairy and meat chickens. That was the dream. That was what he saw the people needed, or they didn't have very much. And so chickens was, of course, the quickest first thing. Started raising chickens. And the indigenous chickens there all had what was known as a mucus drip or a nasal drip in their beaks, because they all had kind of a respiratory problem from unsanitary conditions. And that created this snot nasal drip. And so there, this is before refrigeration. This is, 1950s, Venezuela. And the way the food culture went, the local farmers would come into the town square, the Latin American food court, town square. Vendors then would dicker with the farmers over, buying stuff. And then those vendors would then take them into town and go door to door and sell them to the people in town, who would then buy supper, basically. Okay, this happened almost every day, or there was something like this happening every day. And so you'd have the pineapple man, the banana man, the chicken man, the rice man, whatever. There was enough food knowledge that the senoras who would buy supper, when the chicken man came, they would run their finger down the beak of the chicken to check for snot for nasal drip, right? And of course, if the cleaner the beak was, the healthier the chicken was, and that, of course, made the price go up. So, of course, there's no price tags dangling on chickens, right? So it's all negotiation. And of course, then this knowledge backed up to the vendors, who then dickered with farmers for the cleanest chickens, because they wanted customers who could trust them to bring them the cleanest chickens. This is all, a pretty self-governing type of automatic feedback loop, if you will. And so, because all the indigenous chickens, ran through pretty unsanitary conditions and had this condition, we controlled ours and kept them in pretty sanitary place. And so ours didn't have any of this drippage. And so very quickly, Dad actually cornered the market, the local market, because these vendors, these are clean chickens. And
these dripless chickens.
These dripless chickens, yeah. And of course, what's funny is the other farmers that raised chickens, that were selling chickens, they lost market. But instead of asking, well, how do you do this? They immediately accused us of witchcraft. We were doing, they said voodoo. We were doing voodoo because they didn't understand it, didn't know how this could be done, but they accused us of voodoo. And so anyway, we were rocking along here, and then here came 1959. The junta, Pérez Jiménez was under threat and from power, and there was a revolution. And because of this, we didn't have support from neighbors. In fact, we were disliked by the neighbors because of this, and because we were Americans, and we were no longer were we affiliated with any diplomat, corporation, missionary. We were just out there, and so we became prime targets of the frustration in the countryside. Everybody's mad at everybody. Let's be mad at somebody, and we were easy to be mad at. And so basically, we fled the back door as the machine guns came in the front door, and lost everything. Of course, Dad had put all of his savings into that farm, into that land, and so we fled, and we went and lived in a couple of towns. Ended up in Caracas toward the end, as Dad met with every sitting, the agriculture secretary, the secretary of the interior, the secretary of the treasury. You got all these, cabinet levels. Dad met with every one of them, trying to get, look, I have a deed here. You should protect me. And of course, they were afraid they'd be assassinated. And the local constable and all those people, all they worked on was bribes. How much do you pay me, Senor Salatin? And Dad said, look, I have a deed here. You're supposed to protect me. And it just didn't work that way. And so finally, after 14 months or so of dead ends, there was nothing to do but come back to the U.S. and walk away from it. And that affected Dad. Never got over that. He was 41, when he did that, when that happened, because he loved the people, he loved the country, he loved everything about it. He left his heart there. But today, looking back, that's what's going on in Venezuela today. I'm thinking, with his genius capacity, we probably would have been very successful, and we would have, built a thriving business that today would, of course, just been demolished, like so many businesses have. So I'm very grateful that we were stopped early in the process and not late in the process. And I think that has colored a lot of my life in looking at setbacks. We'll just call them setbacks. You could call them failures, but we didn't fail. It was just a setback. There's nothing that we could or could not have done about it. And so many times when a setback occurs, the sky is falling. How are we ever going to recover? It's a horrible thing. But lots of times when you look back on it 5, 10, 15 years later, that setback, that was a tension point that led us to a better place. And so, we just move forward in faith, not in fear, and trust that that's going to happen. So we came back to the States. We settled we came back Easter Sunday, 1961. I was 4. My older brother was 8, and my sister was in the oven. And so we came back, and Dad was still actually hoping to go back. He was hoping things settled down, maybe we can go back. And so kind of reluctantly, he said, well, let's look at farms within, a day's drive of DC in case the ambassador calls us. And then we can go and we can make changes real fast. So we did that. We looked at farms within about a day's drive of DC. And it came down to 2 farms, the one where we are and another one. And I said, my sister was in the ovens. Mom was 7 months pregnant with my sister. And with all the turmoil we'd been through, it was a bad situation. And the one farm, which, Mom and Dad always said, I don't remember it. I was just 4. We just looked at it, right? They always said it was a better place. It had a big old brick farmhouse and stuff. But the man that was selling it was an 80-year-old bachelor, and he had like 8 dogs living in the house. And Mom just said, I'm
not doing that.
I can't do it. But the farm where we are now, went into the house. It was owned by an elderly, kind of a Swiss couple, and it was, you could move in tomorrow. It was clean, and so we picked that one.
And the farm itself, the house was okay, I guess. And,
Yeah, the house was okay.
The state of the farm itself.
Yeah, the house had been modernized in 1949 by a wealthy family who had bought it and salvaged it. It was an old American chestnut log cabin built in 1790. It was in serious disrepair. One of the chimneys had 3 chimneys. One of the chimneys had fallen off the end. Cows were living in it. Sheep were living in it. And it was, probably another 10 years it would have been unsalvageable. But these folks, they were moneyed and they saw the potential. And so they put a lot of money in it. Obviously put electricity in it, plumbing. They saved the house. But the farm was the only one in the whole area that had gone out of its original family. It was caught up in a state, 5-kid sibling deal, 1890, and these 3 pieces went to the 3 brothers, and they each lived on their 3 pieces. These 2 pieces went to the 2 sisters who married guys, moved out of the area, and then eventually sold it. And so for roughly 45 years there, from 1900 to 1945, roughly, the farm was what we have. It was the people who owned it did not live there. And so they leased it to neighbors who just raped it. I mean, they had this deal where they would 50-50 share the fertilizer bill every spring. And of course, all the local farmers, they would apparently take turns, renting it for a few years. And anyway, the joke when we got there and we, got talking to some of the neighbors, the joke was that these guys throughout the 20s, 30s, 40s would take that fertilizer check. I mean, the landlords didn't live there. So they would take the fertilizer, the 50% that the landlord was paying, and they'd buy it for their own places. And so our place just got nothing, it was just exploited for all those years. So by the time we came, there were 16-foot deep gullies. There were large areas, the size of a house that were just solid bedrock. Between 3 and 8 feet of topsoil had washed off, over 200 years of European plowing and occupation. And then finally, the final, exclamatory abuse of this 45 years of neighbor exploitation. And it was in rough shape. It was in really rough. In fact, we had so little soil when Dad started doing this electric fence stuff, moving the cows around, we didn't have enough soil to hold up electric fence stakes. So he went to town and got used car tires, brought them home, mixed concrete in a wheelbarrow, put it in the car tires, pushed a 1/2-inch pipe down in the middle of it, and would make these stanchions, or, like standards, like a volleyball court, volleyball net. And he'd stack those up on the tractor platform. And my brother and I, we were 5 and 8, 6 and 9. And he would drive slowly, and we could heave these off on the ground, on the rock, as Dad drove slowly. Then he'd go along and put the electric fence stakes down in those 1/2-inch pipes. And that's how we made electric fence. So it was no, not anymore. No, all those rocks are covered now with, at least a foot of soil. It's not 3 feet, but it's a foot. We don't use the tires anymore, and there's soil everywhere. You can still see them when we have a drought. When you have a drought, it's just like a line that goes out those shale scallops in those banks, and it's just like you took a pencil, and you can see those shallow areas.
And Joel, what else is on the farm for those who haven't read your books and seen Polyfaces? A wonderful documentary that Darren Doherty and Lisa Heenan put together a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. If you haven't seen it, grab a copy. It's fantastic. What else? What other enterprises have you got there?
Yeah, so we do grass finished beef. We call it Pigerator pork. So we do pork, pigs too. And then broilers, pastured meat chickens, egg chickens, and turkeys, and ducks, and lamb and rabbit. I think that's. I think that's. I said turkeys. Yeah. So I mean,
no escargot.
No escargot, no llamas, ostriches. Nothing exotic. It's all kind of everyman stuff.
And there's a stacking. There's an expression you use. It's
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So a given acre, at different times of the year, would have cows across it a couple of times, and we use egg mobiles. These are portable chicken houses where chickens free range out and they scratch through the cow patties and eat out the fly larvae and spread the cow patties out in the field. So the egg mobiles follow the cows. And then we'll use those same fields to raise the pastured turkeys, pastured broilers. And the point is, when you stack all those enterprises on, you're up there into the $12,000 an acre that you're getting back from all those symbiotically complementary stacked enterprises.
Let's swing to regenerative agriculture, Joel. It's a reasonably new term, I guess, that sort of encompasses a number of different practices, and you're utilising quite a few of those practices. What's your definition of regenerative ag? Is there a definition?
Well, I think a lot of people are working on such a thing. I'm a pretty simple guy, so my simple explanation is it is any kind of agriculture that increases the commons rather than depleting the commons.
Beautiful.
A lot of people, some people will say, well, commons, we don't use that word very much, but it's a wonderful British, has its seat in British jurisprudence. The commons was the area that was owned in common. It was the place that peasants could actually go and graze a cow or pick some berries or whatever, as opposed to the nobleman's lands, which were, of course, off limits. And so the commons speaks of air, soil, water, and I would even suggest community camaraderie. There's more than just physical structure here in the commons. And so it speaks to the community social aspects as well, but that increases the commons. So this is stuff that was here before we're here. It should be here after we're here. It's the stuff. It's the ultimate wealth of a nation that our children inherit. It's not Disney toys and whatever stock market pieces of paper. It's the actual foundations of life. And so regenerative agriculture to me simply is a system that leaves more of that behind than was there when it started.
And Joel, I trust that I know there are a lot of farmers in Australia, at least, who are looking to transition. That there's my sense of there's a push away from industrial conventional agriculture, and I was one of those farmers as well. And there's a push away from that type of farming, and there's a pull towards this new kind of regenerative farming, and that encompasses, as you say, it's regenerative communities and mental state and all those sorts of things. What are some of the benefits, that farmers who are transitioning, who are thinking about this? What's the carrot we can dangle? To sort of, I guess, give them a sense of comfort that it's not all voodoo. It's not. There's actually some great benefits in this.
Well, there are. When you think about what the average farmer is frustrated about, what vexes your spirit, okay? It's feeling like you can't get ahead of disease. That's one vexation of the average farmer. That whether it's in livestock or in plants, there's always some new disease popping up. I just can't get ahead of it. Secondly, I would say a frustration in normal farming is just a frustration that I can't get ahead of my fertility. My fertility costs too much. It costs too much to get the same value of crop. Another one is that my input costs are constantly escalating, and my sales income is either flat or diminishing, I'm on this treadmill, and all this. And then of course you've got equipment, you've got other things. And so for me, and I will tell you this for Dad, my dad was an economist. That was what his training was in. And so interestingly to me, he came to this as an economist in the 60s, back, goodness, in the 50s. He saw the chemical approach as essentially a drug addiction. I'm on this treadmill. I need a more expensive hit to get the same whatever feeling, benefit. And so he came to this primarily not as an ecologist, but as an economist, saying, how do we create a system in which the difference between the inputs, the cost and the income widens, rather than gets closer and closer. And so the idea of actually, I think our carrot then is that when you actually build resilient soil fertility, it doesn't take as much to keep it up. It becomes a self-perpetuating system. The biology grabs nitrogen from the air. I mean, the azotobacter bacteria. There's all this stuff that starts to happen, and it happens as a partner to you, not as an antagonist to you. And that's a huge thing. I think too that diseases, immunological function in your animals, diseases in your plants, as the soil gets better, those things reduce. We have 1,100 head of cattle on our farm, which is not the biggest thing in the world, but it's up there in the top in our area for sure. And we probably don't see a vet once every 3 years. We do not even have a line item for vet bills. It doesn't even exist. And it's not because we're burying all of our cows. It's because we don't have very much disease.
You'd compost them anyway.
We would if we have a dead one, we compost it. But it's such a difference. It's such a difference to wake up in the morning and not have the first thought be, I wonder what's wrong. Rather, to be able to step into functional, beautiful abundance and not have that little voice on your shoulder saying, I'll bet something's wrong out there. I'll bet there's a fungus. I'll bet there's a root rot. I'll bet there's something. And I think to me, that's just incalculable.
And what about the economic benefits or the positive impact that it is for farmers operating this way?
Well, obviously, if you get nature, if you stop fighting nature and you see nature as a partner where you're kind of hand in hand going the same direction, it takes a lot less energy, a lot less money to fight nature than to get nature working with you in your favor. And for a person, hearing this who's in the Orthodox paradigm, that sounds like a pipe dream. I know it does. But just think about how frustrating it was maybe when you were looking for a spouse and you said, isn't there one out there for me? And then you finally found the one. And suddenly, oh, yeah, this is pretty cool. And I would just encourage people to let that metaphor, work in you a little bit. It is frustrating when things aren't right, and you don't have that pairing yet. But when you get to the right pairing, it's a symbiotic thing.
So I guess there's cost savings because you're not calling the vet out as often, and animal husbandry treatments may be reduced because you're but you're partnering with nature to provide essentially the health, through pasture and soil health. The other side of the equation is the production, the income, the revenue from that. not every farmer who's even thinking about regenerative agriculture, I want to be clear that that doesn't mean you've got to go and value add everything and that's part of the deal. There's lots of ways to do it, but there's obviously for those who want to sort of really change the pattern of their income stream, there's income.
Well, yeah. Well, listen. I'm on the last day of a 26-day multi-country tour. I've been in Germany, France, Spain, Menorca, Gold Coast, Perth, and now in Wodonga, where we're doing this interview. And as I leave now and go home tomorrow from this extended trip and many countries, I'm thinking, what have I seen? What's a thread? What am I going to take away from this trip? And I think since this trip was done at the time of year when it was done, of course, Europe was in the spring. Here we're going into the winter. But if there's one common thread of every place I've been, everything I've seen, it's flogged pasture and a few cows in a great big field. That is a consistent thread, or sheep, but a few head of animals in a great big field, and all the pastures flogged into the ground. Basically, I mean they're like they're shorter than a golf course. That is a common theme through every place, and so by using high-tech electric fencing and modern water piping, we can actually create, for the first time in human history, we can create a simple, cheap infrastructure that allows us to essentially put a steering wheel, a brake, and an accelerator on that four-legged biomass pruner, and we can steer that herd, that cow, that sheep, we can steer them around the landscape with absolute precision to capitalize on the on the sigmoid curve grass growth of grass and how it grows in its stages of fast growth, slow growth, and senescence, and we can work with that biomass expression, if you will, and a couple of days ago I was in Perth and talking with a farmer, and for example, and they had 350 cows in 5 herds, and he said his obstacle, his weak link was time. And I asked him, so when all those cows are calving, how much time do you spend checking cows? Well, he spends most of a day, every day. I mean, 5 herds, he's got to go look at them, find them, check them, all that. And I can tell you, if you put all of them together and put them in a mob, in a small paddock with electric fence around it, and you move them every day, you will change that daily time to less than 30 minutes. You can find your cows, find the calves, see what's going on. You're not searching around, you're finding them. And so for me, this is not organic, regenerative, this is simply
common sense.
This is simply a protocol of efficiency and common sense. So yeah, I think that sometimes we let the discussion trail off into some sort of moral sanctity area, when actually we have the technology to become way more efficient than we are. And even if you're just in the trade, you're just calving cows and you're just raising them and you're just selling them into the sale barn trade, it's worth getting this level of control, not just for what it does ecologically, but just as a major time saving.
Yeah, a management tool.
A management tool. You see everything every day. Doesn't take that long. I mean, my return to labor, moving the cows every day, people say, how can you take all that time to move cows every day? I mean, it takes 20 to 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I see everyone go by. But of course, in our community, the average farmer, they've all got their little chaw of tobacco, down in their lip. So they all kind of talk like this, a little bit of tobacco.
Have you tried that tobacco?
No, I haven't. I haven't. It's awful. It looks awful.
Don't swallow.
No, don't swallow. But they'll say, move cows every day. My goodness, we tried to get the cows in last week, and we had 3 4-wheelers, 2 pickup trucks, 2 dogs, all my cousins and aunts and uncles. We spent all day trying to get them in. We never did get 2 of them. They got stuck back there behind the old gully. And we never did get them in. I can't imagine moving cows every day. That's that's the paradigm.
Yeah.
That's the paradigm. And the thing is, the animals respond to routine. They respond to that. And listen, if you go out about the same time every day, if at 4 o'clock every day, we try to move them around 4 o'clock every day. And if you got called to a bowl of ice cream every day about 4, along about 3:45, your ears would twitter and your tail would twitch and you'd stand up and be ready, for that call. And so it's really not that hard.
And why 4 o'clock? Is that to fit in with other things, or that's when they're... What's
there are a lot of reasons for 4. A couple. One is that's the highest bricks reading in the grass of the day. Nice. So it's a high bricks because the sugar goes up in the day and comes back down at night. Number 2, there's no dew, so you don't have a compromised digestion for bloat and things like that. So everything is dry, so you get really, really good fermentation in the rumen. And the third is that in the summer, if you move them at 4, you are trending into cooler temperatures. If you move them in the morning, when the sun comes up and it gets hot, even if they're not full, they're going to want to go head for a shade tree and quit. But at 4, it's just going to get more and more and more comfortable to graze all through and finally end, 9, 10 o'clock the next morning. Well, by that time, they're chock full. They can't eat anymore anyway. So they just go lounge, and then you move them again at 4.
They have a camp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they just camp out till you move them again at 4. So you maximize the comfortable grazing time of the day.
Again, sort of common sense stuff.
Yeah,
Isn't it really?
It is common sense.
And your example of the farmer in WA where she you suggested to putting those mobs together. I mean, I guess not even having to put new fences up, just putting those mobs together, which is opening a gate and moving them in.
Sure.
Without that doesn't cost a bit of time, but that's actually, that impact alone is enormous, isn't it? And then there'd be other subsequent paddock changes potentially, but that just simple principle of higher density.
Yeah, higher density. Well, I'll tell you, we lease about 12 properties in the immediate community, and so we've been doing this now for almost 25 years, where we've been leasing land, and so we've developed we've developed with fencing and water. When I say fencing, I mean a single strand of electric fence on a simple little post. This isn't big, high tensile, expensive stuff. It's really, really simple. And we've developed, all these properties over the years, and wet year, drought year, doesn't matter. We have not yet come to a single property and developed it where we didn't double its production in the first 12 months. Double. Now, that costs us in materials, it costs us about $45 an acre. Even if we have to build a pond or whatever, to do water development and the electric and the permanent cell design. Now we use portables, throughout, but the basic permanent design, the laneways, the waterways, things like that, fenced out, costs about $45 to $50 an acre in materials, and about the same amount in time, if you want to pay for your labor. So say $100 an acre. If you can double your production for a one-time capital expenditure of $100 an acre. So this isn't like fertilizer that you just have to keep maintaining. This is a one-time capital investment. If you can double your production for a one-time capital investment of $100 an acre, that is equivalent to buying land for $100 an acre.
Totally.
And I haven't seen any $100 an acre land for sale lately.
And that's every year. Like you double it in the first year, and then
Right.
you maintain that.
And then you maintain it. Yeah, it doesn't go back.
You have got.
It doesn't go back.
Essentially farming vertically.
Yeah. Well, you've taken a 500 acre place, and you've made it equivalent to 1,000 every single year
With a one-off.
with a one-off capital investment. Yeah.
Talking about investment and economics, Joel, what are some of the skills you think farmers need to learn or need to have to retain their relevance in the future economy? So I guess where there's industrial agriculture is the main type of agriculture. Those farmers thinking to transition and really remain relevant in any context. What do they need to know? What are some of the skills they need?
Well, I think it's no different than any other business. We farmers, we tend to think we're in a special business because we deal with, weather and all this stuff. But look, farming is more than a business. Sure, of course, it's more than a business.
It's unique, isn't it? We're living in our business.
Yeah, we are. But it is still a business.
Totally.
So if there's an across the board business principle that applies, it probably applies to farmers too. And I would say, some of the things that farmers need to know is, first of all, the ability to communicate. You've got to communicate with your spouse, your children, people, your team, your neighbors. And communication is typically not taught in Ag 101.
Absolutely not. Farmers just what?
No.
What is that?
Yeah. We farmers, we generally we don't even like people, and so just learning to communicate, to appreciate how to wrestle over mission statements, how to create expectations for each other and for the other members of the team, these sorts of things. Communication's just huge. And you don't have to be an orator, but you have to be. I think the first step of communication is first you have to be comfortable in your own skin. People that aren't comfortable in their own skin don't talk, because that makes you vulnerable. But if you're comfortable in your own skin, if you're happy with what you're doing, if you're not trying to hide, if you think what you're doing is whatever, sacred, if it's noble, if it's good, then you don't have to be embarrassed about vulnerability. It's all okay. So
how does someone get comfortable with themselves? Because that is a major. I guess it's a mental hurdle almost, isn't it? So
well, it is.
How does one, work on themselves to get to that point? Any sort of insight?
Yeah, well, I think you have to find your soul. And finding your soul means letting yourself be free enough to dream. We don't encourage dreaming. We encourage obligatory performance. We encourage do your homework that I've assigned. All right. We encourage obey me or whatever. This is what we grow up doing. We grow up trying to please mom and dad and uncles and aunts and extended family, and then teachers, and then professors, and then employers, and I think that discovering what really floats my boat, what do I want written on my tombstone? What if I could say what I want my 10 closest friends to say about me, what would that be? These are kind of pump primer questions. But what they do is they help us to discover who we are. And you know what? It's okay to have weaknesses. We all have weaknesses. And so part of discovering who we are is, where am I strong? Where am I weak? And rather than, be frustrated at our weakness, the idea is to leverage our strength and find partners who can help us where we're weak. That's the whole idea of the Strengths Finder, business protocol. And I think there's a lot to that. But I think that this really knowing who we are and being willing to wrestle with our inner person. What floats my boat? What gets me up in the morning? What would I do if I never got a paycheck? Those are things that can help us discover our soul, which then helps us to move to a place in our farm business that is comfortable in that soul. Look, if you don't like animals, you shouldn't be raising animals. If what you really like is trees, then how can you transition to trees? I mean, I'm just throwing something out there, but that's the kind of stuff, and I'm convinced that, in the 2012 book, The Regrets of the Dying, the number one regret in all the surveys, the number one regret was, I wish I'd have had the courage to do what I really wanted to do. That's a profound regret and a profound insight into deathbed wishes. And so if that's the most common thing, then let's see if we can fix that early.
And I'd suggest that a farm, nature is a ideal place to find one's soul. I guess one of the things where I find, or I feel, my sense is people get lost, is they're just they've lost a connection with nature, which is really, and we are part of nature, so we lose that connection with ourselves. But we're actually we're in the perfect environment to tap back in and get a direct injection of the good stuff of nature to then go, right, well, who I am in this world, I mean, I guess that's my sense. So we're really blessed, I think, as farmers to be in a position to be on the spot, I mean, I can imagine, I totally get it, people, not on farms, in cities, urban areas, who are a little lost, and haven't found their centre because, their centre, my centre is being in nature,
Yeah, well, I'm sure if I were a yoga instructor, I would have I'd have a protocol there too.
It'd be very stretchy, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. It'd be pretty stretchy. But I think generally we have to let our minds slow down. In business, sometimes we talk about the difference between Whitby and Watby, working in the business, working on the business. And our minds are racing with this to-do list, right? Our minds are racing with this to-do list. And it actually takes effort. You actually have to put attention on putting a comma in your mental frenzy. That's one reason I promote a lot for farm families, rather than thinking about taking a 2-week holiday and just putting all your attention frenzying throughout the year so you can take a 2-week holiday. Rather, find a spot on your place. I mean, it could be 200 yards from the house behind a little clump of trees. I don't care where it is, but find a spot that you can have a little campfire. You can have a couple benches, and once a month, take the family out there, cook some hot dogs, roast some marshmallows, whatever, that you enjoy doing. If you've got a campfire type popcorn maker, do that. But 2 hours of undevoted attention in the quiet toward each other will do worlds, because it's a comma in your life, and you have to schedule those commas in your life. You have to plan and take those times. But if they don't have, the beauty of this is it doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be time. And you think about kids growing up, think about your growing up. What do you remember? You remember those times when dad and mom seemed unfrenzied. Those are the most special times of children's lives. And so we have to do that for families.
Well, that was a classic. Joel, commas in our life.
Yeah.
You relate a wonderful story a couple of times in the last few days about at different venues when you were dropped from the baseball team. Why? And you said that was a real turning point. Why was that a turning point?
Yeah. So my mom was a phys ed teacher. Athletic standout in high school and college. My older brother was a real standout athlete. So, here comes the little brother coming along, and there's this kind of expectation, that, okay, you're going to at least compete, there's going to be some sort of fair competition. And so I went out for the baseball team in 7th grade and I didn't make it. I got cut. And I went out for the basketball team in 8th grade and I got cut. I didn't make it. I was that's what you call a slow bloomer. I was kind of pudgy, at that time. It took me a little bit to bulk up, and get my muscles. And so anyway, I had already previously had a little bit of success in reading poetry contests, spelling bees, doing some stuff, and I had a love, a flair of writing and stuff. And so I made a pretty definite decision after that second cut. Hang this, I am never going to play another. Now, I mean, sure, Sunday afternoon backyard football, yeah, but I'm not going to play sports at all. I'm going to put all my attention on communication, this communication, writing, speaking, all that stuff that I clearly had a passion for and a talent for. And I'm so thankful that happened, because if it hadn't, I wouldn't have had this wonderful background. So I went into, I was played the lead in all the high school plays, got a debate team, through college as well. Entered essay contests. I never entered an essay contest I didn't win throughout high school and college, got scholarships, all this. And so, and in fact, in high school then, 11th and 12th grades of high school, I worked Saturday nights at the local newspaper as the night receptionist. I'd go in, it was a Sunday morning paper, so I'd go in Saturday afternoon and answer the phone, do police reports, write obituaries. It was this humdrum. But if I'd have been playing sports, I would have never been able to do that. And so anyway, all I'm saying, I'm just telling young people, hey, if you fail at something, don't be angry about it. Simply make a little turn and turn your attention onto what you're good at, and let those be little signposts that help guide you to where your real talent is. And I remember very well when I came back to the farm full time, all of my debate buddies and forensics buddies in college and the professors, they just were so frustrated that I was throwing my life away, all this communication talent going back to the farm. And of course, in reality, I probably talk to more people today than any of them do as lawyers and doctors and all this stuff. And so I'm grateful for being cut from the teams, because that helped to channel my energy in the place where I really was good.
And you're still farming. It's not as though you turned into a bookworm, or you were still doing your farming.
I've still got my calluses and my splinters. You bet. And what a privilege to be able to mix that hands-on, dirt under the fingernails vocation of farming, with this communication ability. Most farmers wouldn't be able, even if they had that talent, wouldn't be able to exploit it, because the industrial farming template, is not conducive to that generally. And so by direct marketing and developing a brand, I was comfortable in that spot, storytelling, messaging, and all the things that were necessary to present a brand, an idea, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
After school, I think it was, you were a forensic investigative journalist. Is that right?
Yeah.
Did that stand you in good stead for the future? Because you wrote a wonderful book called Everything I Do Is Illegal. Because you were rubbing up against a few issues. Like, did that sort of investigative?
Yes, absolutely.
Skill.
Well, all of that. I mean, debate is 90% research, because you're researching evidence for your arguments. And so, I spent many a day. Dad, I didn't make the greatest grades in college, and it wasn't because I was drinking. It was because I was with the debate team, and we were every spare minute we were researching, so we could win the next tournament. And so, I spent many a day in the bowels of, federal government depositories, researching, getting information together. And so that, plus then the ability to formulate an argument and not be intimidated by a smooth talking opposition. And then at the newspaper, where I was an investigative reporter for 2.5 years after college, and of course tangled with government officials routinely. I was covering meetings. I was sleuthing the story behind the story, what's really going on here. And there's a lot of things behind the story. And so all of those things added up to where, when we did begin tangling with some regulatory pushback from the bureaucracy, I didn't just cave like most people would and just be intimidated. I was able to not only have the confidence, but have the understanding of who to call, the congressman, the senator, the whatever, needed to call in order to, help navigate the labyrinth.
Do you think that farmers, can take a message from that, or that they have skills that they learn at university or at school or in other jobs, and now they're farming, they're not using? My sense is that it's a lot of untapped history, knowledge, background.
Absolutely. Listen, I love farmers. Farmers are, we have to be expert at a lot of things. And so, there's a lot of talent in the farming community, but I think too often it's not leveraged. And there are certainly farmers that could be, you could be in the local theater group. You could volunteer at the tourist center. You could, read stories at the library for kids. There are any number of things that we can do. And I just think that it's tragic that we have this. I'll tell you that, this is I think a societal indictment that we, I think as a highly developed, sophisticated, techno-glitzy culture, we have created this mystique of the kind of the peasant farmer. Look, when's the last time you heard a rising senior go to the guidance counselor at school for curriculum, a council, and the guidance counselor looks and says, "Wow, Sally, man, you've got really great grades. You are smart. You should be a farmer. When's the last time you've heard that?
We're laughing, but it's sad, isn't it?
It is sad. It is sad. And society sits here and complains about, resources not being cared for and lack of innovation in farming and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And then they expect the farmer to be the peasant and drive a jalopy and all this, when I speak at urban foodie groups, I say, I want you to look at yourself in the mirror deep down and tell yourself that you really would like to see your farmer come to farmer's market in a Mercedes Benz. And if you can't honestly say that to yourself, you need to examine what your problem is. Now, I'm not saying materials is everything, okay? But that's the mentality. Totally. That's the mentality. And I think that we farmers have allowed ourselves. I fuss it when I talk to farmers and they all come in like a bunch of hayseeds. I say, look, guys, if you want respect, you have to dress like respect. So when you go to farmer's market, wear a tie.
Spruce up
a little bit. Get a suit if you need to, and it's amazing. I've done so many. I've done everything from Bloomberg News to ABC Nightly News to whatever, and every time I walk into those high powered urban TV studios in my suit and tie, first thing I say is, well, where's your hat and your jeans? They all want you to come as this redneck hick. This, well, I don't know. I just didn't,
They're disappointed when you turn up.
Yeah. I say, no, I'm a farmer CEO. And I'm standing toe to toe with any CEO in the country. Bring them on. And dress for success. And so, people sense pretty quickly how you feel about yourself. And so, clothes aren't everything, but they are something.
Well, they're your brand. They're the first thing you see.
Absolutely.
It's the wrapping.
Yeah, that's right.
Joel, what talking about urban groups and so on and eaters, as you and I, we're feeders, and there's a whole lot of eaters out there. How can the eaters engage and make a real tangible positive impact on the environment, on their food system? I guess I'm really interested in the environment side of it because we just had a government a federal election, and there's a lot of debate around the state of the environment, understandably. But I couldn't help but sort of think the most vocal generally are non-farmers, and that's okay. But I was thinking, how can they focus that energy into something that's positive and tangible, around environment?
Yeah, well, I have three pieces of advice for the urbanite. First of all, thank you, because without urbanites, I wouldn't have any customers. So I'm glad everybody doesn't want to be a farmer. It makes opportunity for some of us to be farmers. So first of all, I respect.
Three cheers to them.
Three cheers, yeah. To the that's fine. And frankly, I like people that know how to build computers and make iPhones and stuff like that. Okay, and that's probably not going to happen out communing with nature in some place. All right, so good on you. So the three things. Number one is get in your kitchen. We cannot have this profound an abdication from a visceral link with food and expect food to be authentic. You can't have authenticity in any sector of a civilization where there is complete ignorance about that sector. So you got to get in your kitchen. You can't just get stuff in cellophane and nuke it, single serving. And by the way, my litmus test of if you're getting in your kitchen is, are you eating leftovers? Because the single service cellophane wrapped thing today is the trademark of non-communal eating, no dining room table, and no relation to food. And so using your kitchen to prepare, process, package, preserve food is the heart. Home centricity is the heart of an authentic food system. That is not a sexist statement. Men and women can both get in the kitchen. In fact, Kevin Lehman wrote a book, "Sex Starts in the Kitchen," and it's all about working together in the kitchen, together. And it's a kind of initial.
It's foreplay.
It's foreplay. Sure, it is. Sure, so kitchens are central to the food system. And I think too often we think that we can segregate. Again, we can silo this thing. We've got the farmers over here. We've got the food manufacturers over here, and we've got the kitchens. They're really techno-glitzy, but we don't know how to use them. And I'm going to roar about the environment. No. You've got to come down off the bleachers and participate. That's number one. Mm-hmm. Number two is do something yourself. Do something to engage in the mystical magic of biology. It can be as simple as a vermicomposting bin under your kitchen sink. It can be, a hanging herbal, one of these PVC pocketed, herbal gardens on your patio, a beehive on the roof. Get rid of the dog, the cat, the gerbil, and the boa constrictor, and put in 2 chickens. All right, and the chickens will eat all your kitchen scraps and give you 2 egg treasures a day. I mean, what's better than that? And if you've got teenagers, there's no better role model for teenagers. Chickens get up early in the morning, happily work all day, do it turning trash to treasure, and as soon as the sun goes down, they go to bed. They don't go carousing in the town at night. I mean, it's a perfect role model for teenagers. So do something yourself that just helps you to put you in a humble position toward, wow, this is bigger than me. Okay. And number 3, so first, get in your kitchen. Number 2, do something yourself to participate in the mysticalism of biology. And number 3 is find your local food treasures in your community. Every community has good farmers, great farmers, and there are more today than there have ever been for a long, long time. So does this mean you might not be able to go to the movies Friday night? Yep, it might mean that. Does this mean that you might have to forego the entertainment square dance or whatever? Well, maybe. But my favorite story of this was I was in Toronto doing a seminar, and the other speaker was an attorney from Toronto who lived in a 6th floor flat, high-powered attorney, 6-figure income. She and her husband, she had the baby. Her husband had something to do with it, but they had a baby, all right? And it changed their lives. They said, ooh, we're responsible for this little life. What are we going to do? And so they sat down and they brainstormed about it. And they said, you know what? Let's take 1 year, and every hour and penny that we would have spent on entertainment, we're going to invest that for 1 year in finding integrity food. And so instead of going to the football game, instead of going on Disney World or whatever, they went sleuthing. They found their beef farmer. They found a dairy. They found, grain by the 25 kilo bag. They all this stuff. And now this has been a few years back. It probably wouldn't be maybe possible today, but what she said was that it took us 1 year, but at the end of the year, we had no barcodes in our pantry. Now, that probably wouldn't be done today, but you can appreciate 20 years ago how revolutionary that would have been. Totally. And so to me, she's my quintessential story. If she could do this, what am I waiting for? What's my problem? And so Einstein said the definition of insanity, right, is doing the same thing and hoping for a different result. So many people, they want to change a trajectory. They want a hydrating landscape. They want, nutritious food. They want all this stuff, but let me just sit and eat bonbons and watch the Kardashians and you guys just fix it. You guys just fix it over here. Well, you know what? There aren't any you guys. There's just us guys. And we have to fix it one at a time. And the cumulative effect of participatory decisions made right over time moves the needle. So get in your kitchen, do something yourself, meet your food treasure in your community.
Find your farmer.
Find your farmer.
Recently, prior to the election, Joel, there were lots of protests, school children leaving, in school hours and protesting, and I totally understand why and their intention, and I think it had an effect. Mm-hmm. My wonderful mother, she had not a different view, an alternative or an additional view. She sort of looked at that and thought, well, you know what? There's a lot of energy there, a lot of, not angst, it was bordering on angst, And,
Sure.
And to this question about how can people make a difference, and she very simply said, well, why don't those teachers and parents, instead of missing school and going and protesting, which has its merit, put them on a bus and go down to a reserve and plant some trees.
Right.
Or rehabilitate the waterway, or actually join their local land care group or bush care group.
Chop some thistles. Yeah. Your mother is a wise woman.
I'll tell her that.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I mean, we love to. Well, it's back to the Stephen Covey 3-sphere, the stuff that's beyond your control, sphere of influence, and what you can control. And we love to live in that beyond our control sphere instead of focusing on, well, what can I do today? What is something that I can do today? And if we really get that done right, actually our sphere of influence increases. But if we live on this outer ring of flailing away at things that are beyond our control, our sphere of influence actually shrinks. And I think that's just a profound thought. And I think she's exactly right. Just start participating in something that's very practical that you can do today. Go out in the schoolyard and plant some green beans. Yeah.
At Burrawa, we have a wonderful program called the BEAT program, the Burrawa Education program, and it's been going for many years, award-winning, and children from Sydney come down, year 10 I think it is, come down to Burrawa, and year 5 children from Burrawa teach them about farming. And they come and they plant trees. They've been to Hanamino and they've planted trees, and I think that's such a invaluable exercise, but such a good use of their time, So,
yes.
I think there's a lot of opportunity that's being missed. And of course, there's those children being in nature and getting a few calluses and a few thistle bites. I think that's a kind of good thing. Joel, you are a great collaborator on Polyfaces on Polyface Farm, and you mentioned the 3 C's the other day. Can you run us through those little nuggets of gold? Sure.
So when we look for a team member, and I'm using that rather than an employee, just because I don't want to limit this, but when we're looking for a partner, a team member, whether they're paid or a collaborator or whatever, there are kind of 3 C's that every business develops as a business, and one is a culture. Every business has a certain culture. It has a defining culture. How it views the world, its value statements, those kinds of things. It's kind of its persona. And then each business has a community that it serves. These are vendors. These are, other, obviously vendors, buyers, neighbors. Okay, I mean, there's all this community.
Interaction.
You interact, yeah. It's all the people you're interacting with. Okay, this community, and then the final is every business has a certain character. These are the things that define our integrity, our what's important to us as a business, and so culture, community, character, those three have to fit. So, for example, at Polyface, if we're putting out a plea for let's just say a delivery driver, that's one we've had to do because our old one retired last year. So, and let's say we get 10 responses and we decide to interview 4 of them. So we tell them to come out to the farm. We'll do an interview, and we go out and greet them, and we look in and there's a McDonald's cup in the car caddy. Thanks for coming. The interview's over. That's not our culture. Our culture's clean food. Okay. And so, that's not being snobbish or elitist. It's, I've done this before. I've asked business people, what's the biggest regret you've ever had in business? And you'd be surprised how many of them will say, keeping a person beyond when I realized they wouldn't fit. And, you hope, I hope he'll learn to come in on time. Oh, I hope he'll learn to take care of the tractor. I mean, any number of things, right? And the fact is that when it gets to that tension point, retreat is best. Right. Yeah, just it's not a fit. And doesn't mean they're not a bad. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. Doesn't mean you're condemning them. It's just we like the word fit because it's a non-judgmental term. We even use it for the like the apprentice and intern applicants that we turn down. We don't say we don't write and say the rejection. We don't say we don't like you or you weren't good enough or anything. We say at this time we just our sense is that you're not a good fit for us, and you may be a great fit for somebody else, but at this time we think it's not a good fit for us. That's a very gracious way to tell somebody you probably don't work in our community, our character, and our culture.
Pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you referenced a book the other day, Joel, Meet Me at the Top by Zig Ziglar.
Right.
Where does that fit in? What's the relevance of that?
Well, Zig Ziglar, he was probably one of the next to where maybe Dale Carnegie. He was perhaps, the world's top salesman of the time. And one of his outstanding, he had many zingers, but one of them was, if you get enough other people to reach their dreams, you'll reach yours. And that's just a really powerful one. And, if you know what your other family members and what everybody else on your team, where they want to go in life, and then you begin serving them to help them get where they want to go, you'll probably get where you want to go. It's a good one.
Joel, tell me about the state of regenerative agriculture here in Australia. You've been here for 10 days.
Yeah, 10 days. Uh-huh.
And this is your 16th trip.
Right.
So you probably had made some observations along the way. Where's your sense of regenerative agriculture in Australia, and how we fit into the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, all I can say is good on you and congratulations for Australia. Good on you. Yeah, I do travel around the world, and my sense is that Australia is probably, if not the top, certainly in the top, right in the top, 2 or 3 countries in the world whose awareness is building in this. There's a higher percentage. Shoot, on the bus today, coming back from the chestnut farm, a lady and a guy told me that the Canberra farmers market, they get 8,000 to 9,000 shoppers a market. That's unbelievable. I don't know that there's a market like that in the U.S.
Really?
Maybe the New York green markets, but that's a lot of people. Yeah. That's a lot of people. And the thing is, Canberra is only 400,000. New York is whatever, 14 million. Okay. So, my sense is that Australia is leading the world in this regenerative space. And it should. I mean, many of the icons in the movement have come from here. I mean, my mentors, either in person or in word, many are from here. I mean, from P.A. Yeomans with key lines to Bill Mollison and Dave Holmgren with permaculture to Christine Jones with agronomy, Colin Seiss now with pasture cropping, Peter Andrews with stream remediation, Darren Dougherty, probably the best water landscape guy in the world. Yeah. These are all coming from Australia. And my personal sense is, I haven't read this anywhere, but my sense is Australia's a very fragile landscape, but it's also a very wealthy country. Most fragile landscapes are impoverished. But because it's fragile, the awareness is high. It's drying out. Mm-hmm. So there's a high awareness, but there's financial ability to experiment, to try, to wiggle, to have, compared to a kid in the Sahara that's just trying to figure out how to stay alive for tomorrow. Mm-hmm. He's limited in the experiments and trials that he can run. Here in Australia, it's fragile, awareness is high, but the economy allows some wiggle room in the trial space. And that's a wonderful combination. And I think that's one of the reasons Australia leads the world in this. So I can tell you the world's eyes are on Australia. So wear the responsibility seriously and continue to lead the world. That's what I would say.
That's great news. I'm really pleased to hear that. And I hope that Col Seiss and Peter Andrews and others will listen to this. I'll send it to them directly. Joel, we are on the home straight, and I'm conscious that you have been talking for the last 26 days, pretty much non-stop. But I do need to ask you about, back to your comments about communication and storytelling. And you said the other day that storytellers will lead their trade. What do you mean by that?
Well, because people who can communicate the heart of their vocation are the ones that inspire. They're the ones that lead, that encourage, that lead their movement. And so, the communicators end up being the leaders in their industries. Doesn't matter whether it's rocketry, biochemistry, whatever. The names that are at the marquee of all of those vocations and enterprises are the people who can tell the stories about it. And so, it's funny, parents will come up to me, and my little, Johnny wants to be a farmer. He's here, right here. He's, 9 years old. What would be the best thing I could do, to help him? And of course I blow mom's mind by telling her, well, join the local theater group, learn how to tell stories. And of course, they look at you like you're from Pluto, but I'm serious about that. I mean, it's funny, but I'm serious about that because if you can communicate, you can market. If you can tell stories, you can market, you can sell, you can create excitement about your life and your vocation. And communication's just invaluable in all facets of life. But as farmers, I think it's one of our weakest links, and something that we should cultivate among farmers. Maybe we need a farmer Toastmasters group. You know?
That's a great idea. And there's been talk, recently, and will continue. I hope more than talk actually happen. That sort of platforms for farmers to put stories. To actually, I guess, some training about social media and telling stories, whether it's a video and so on. But then having a platform to actually express that, and there's lots of ideas, and technology is such an amazing thing now that these things are absolutely possible. So. Just switching to decision making, Joel. You had a bit of it. Yeah, we're gonna head off pretty soon because if you're as hungry as I am, decision making. What you touched on it this afternoon. What's your quick sort of tips on making decisions?
Well, the first tip is you got to have a mission statement. If I could boil down Alan Savory's contribution to the world in one thing, and I think there's a lot of value in boiling stuff, in saying the one thing, because, well, it helps us to focus. And so if somebody asked me what's the one thing Alan Savory's brought to the world that's most meaningful of anything, I would say it's the mission statement, because to me the mission statement is I call it the thesis statement for your life's essay.
Nice.
And it's also your roadmap, your direction for where you're going. Look, if you want your spouse to go with you, if you want your kids to go with you, you want a broader team to go with you, you got to have a destination in that car. They're not going to jump in that car if they say, "Where are we going?" You say, "Well, I don't know. Just get in the car. We'll go." Nobody's going to go. And so a mission statement, and that's a one sentence. It's not a paragraph. It's a one sentence. Man, my best comp teachers in high school, man, they drilled this into me. Oh, I love them to death. Of course, I was an English major, so I did love my English teachers. But the good ones would say, until you can write your thesis statement in one sentence, you're not ready to write the essay. Yeah. Otherwise, you just ramble. You go on. And I can say, after having written 12 books, if you can't write the book in one sentence, you're not ready to write either. Nice. And so the mission statement is number one. I think number two, maybe another one would be to expose yourself to as many things as possible, even stuff that you think is weird. Innovation comes from the lunatic fringe. It always does, and we love to read what agrees with us and what we agree. And so I tell liberals to read the conservative stuff. The organic farmers read some Monsanto stuff, and the industrial farmers read the organic stuff. We tend to not do that. And I would just say one more maybe, and that is to cultivate brainstorming sessions in our family, in our team. Because farmers are generally family businesses, nobody comes to a meeting, a discussion with an open slate. They remember the judgmental statement that Dad made and the mistake that, so you're right. And we come to these, and we got all this stuff. And so in the Lean Farm, Ben Hartman writes about 10 things that are major leaks in a business. And my favorite one, I think, is failure to capture everyone's ideas. And so some of the most roadblock getting over hurdle sessions that we've ever had in our family and our farm is when I call brainstorming sessions with the caveat, nobody can say a single negative word. Everything is great idea. Everything is positive. It's good, because some people are more timid than others, and they need space to know that they're not going to come and get hammered and get halfway out with an idea and, oh, come on, Jane, you know better than right? And so we come together, we get them all on the table, and then we eat our milk and cookies and leave and go about our jobs and let it simmer for a couple of weeks. Then we come back for an analysis session. And that's really a powerful technique for getting ideas on the table.
You can cull them later on to just let the
Exactly.
juices flow. Yeah.
Cull them later. Let the juices go and get them down on paper.
Joel, last question. What's your purpose in the world?
What's my purpose in the world? Well, our mission statement is to develop economically, emotionally, and environmentally enhancing agricultural prototypes and facilitate their duplication throughout the world.
Is that you as an individual? I mean, you're contributing to that? Do you have your own
yeah.
little tenant for Joel Salatin?
Well, I guess my personal one is to receive the commendation, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant," at the end.
Well, that is the end. And can you please not stop? Can you not stop telling your story, because it is, it's amazing, and the books you've written, the impact you've had on really the world. And I'm not pumping up your tires. Well, I am, but it's absolutely it's appropriate, because it's been a real honour to have you here and spend the last couple of days and a day last week with you, and I wish you all the very best for your trip home. And when you get home, I hope that Daniel hasn't got too many jobs for you. Daniel, if you're listening to this, I hope you didn't nail your old man when he got home. Give him a break, and I hope to see you next time you're in Australia.
Thank you. I appreciate all the hospitality and courteousness that Australians always extend me. It's always a delight to be here, and having been here so many times, it's wonderful to see people again and again and again, and watch the progress and catch up as friends. And it's been an honor to be with you as well. Thank you.
Joel, thank you so much.
I trust you enjoyed listening to Joel Salatin as much as I enjoyed speaking with him. He never fails in digging up more gold. Just when I thought I'd heard it all, he so articulately throws a few more nuggets our way. Next week's podcast is episode 3, and it is with the man that brought us That Sugar film and last year's compelling documentary 2014. It's Damon Gammo. We talk about regenerative agriculture, renewable energy, COVID-19, and how the world has changed now and how he sees the world changing at the other side of this crisis. We talk about his epiphany, his attention events that got to change his trajectory and send him on his current regenerative journey. I love speaking with him. What a lovely fella. And I trust you'll enjoy listening to him too next week. And don't forget to comment, to share, to subscribe to this podcast. It's on YouTube as well. And share it. Anything you can do to help us get this message out and have other people enjoy the guests on the Regenerative Journey podcast. Stay well. Talk to you soon.
For more episode information, please head over to www.charliearnott.com.au. This podcast is produced by Rhys Jones at Jaeger Media, and as the recipient of the Bob Hawke Landcare Award, Charlie would like to thank Landcare Australia for their support in the creation of this first series of the Regenerative Journey.